Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to try and demystify the pretty complex world of psychotic disorders. But instead of just getting lost in a bunch of labels, we're going to look at them like structures. We're going to break them down into their most basic building blocks to really see how they all fit together. So let's just start with this big question. We hear the word psychosis thrown around a lot, right? But what does it actually mean to lose touch with reality? You know, it's a phrase that gets misunderstood all the time. But really, at its core, it just describes this fundamental break between what a person is perceiving and what's actually happening around them.
You know, the best way to really get a handle on all the different psychotic disorders is to think of them as being built from the exact same set of building blocks. So first things first, let's define the core symptoms that make up those very blocks.
So, every single psychotic disorder is built from two fundamental types of symptoms. On one side, you've got positive symptoms. Now, this is crucial. Positive doesn't mean good. Think of it like in math. It means the addition of something, an excess or a distortion of normal functions. And then on the other side, negative symptoms represent a reduction or a loss of those functions.
Okay, so let's dive right into that first set of blocks, the positive symptoms. Honestly, these are usually the ones people are most familiar with. They're often the most dramatic features of psychosis.
First up, delusions. What are they? Well, they're these deeply held beliefs that a person will not let go of, even when you show them clear, conflicting evidence. And these beliefs can be about almost anything.
Probably the most common type you'll hear about is a persecutory delusion. This is the belief that someone or some group is out to get you, that they're going to harm or harass you.
And then, for contrast, you can have something like grandiose delusions. This is where a person is absolutely convinced they have incredible abilities, or that they're secretly famous or fabulously wealthy.
Next up in our set of blocks are hallucinations. Now, these are sensory experiences that feel 100% real to the person, but they're happening without anything in the external world causing them. And while they can involve any of the senses, sight, touch, smell, the most common by far are auditory hallucinations, like hearing voices when no one is there.
Another really key positive symptom is disorganized thinking. You can't see disorganized thoughts, right? So this is usually figured out by listening to a person's speech. It might show up as what's called derailment, where they just jump from one topic to another with no logical connection. Or in more severe cases, it can become a word salad, where their speech is just a jumbled, incomprehensible mix of words.
And finally, we have what's called grossly disorganized motor behavior. And this can include catatonia. We're not just talking about being a little clumsy here. This is a major disruption in movement. It can be a whole range of things, from resisting any and all instructions to holding really strange and rigid postures, or even swinging from one extreme to the other, from complete stillness and silence to aimless, agitated activity. And wow, these images really show just how profound that disruption can be. These are historical photos of people in catatonic states, holding these unusual, rigid body positions for a really long time. It's just such a powerful visual of that disconnect between a person's mind and their body's movements.
All right, let's switch gears and move on to our second set of building blocks, the negative symptoms. Now, these are often a lot less dramatic than the positive symptoms we just talked about, but they can be just as debilitating for the person experiencing them, sometimes even more so.
So remember, these symptoms are all about a loss of function. Just think for a second about what this means for someone's day-to-day life. Diminished emotional expression can make it so hard to connect with people. Avolition isn't just laziness. It's this deep lack of motivation that can make even the simplest task feel like climbing a mountain. Allogia and asociality can lead to profound isolation. And anhedonia, well, that just robs a person of the ability to feel joy from things they used to love.
Okay, so now we have our two sets of building blocks, the positive symptoms and the negative symptoms. Now we can finally start to see how they come together, how we can construct the different disorders that make up the schizophrenia spectrum.
And this is where that whole building block idea becomes so useful. Just look at how these three major disorders are defined. They're built from the same core symptoms, the exact same blocks. So what's the difference? The really crucial factor that separates them is time. Brief psychotic disorder is just what it sounds like. It's brief, lasting less than a month. Schizoform goes on for longer. And to get a diagnosis of schizophrenia, the disturbance has to be there for at least 6 months. It really shows you that a diagnosis isn't always some permanent static label.
So what happens when we toss another type of building block into the mix? Well, that's pretty much what schizoaffective disorder is.
You take the core building blocks of psychosis, the delusions, the hallucinations, and you add a major mood episode, like depression or mania, that's a really prominent and persistent part of the whole picture.
Okay, so we've built the disorders from all their different parts, but what's the blueprint? What actually causes these conditions to pop up in the first place? For this, let's use schizophrenia as our main example.
The most important thing to get here is that there's no single cause, not one. The leading model today is that it's a combination of genetic vulnerability, a sort of predisposition you're born with, and then environmental factors, like major stress or trauma, that can act as a trigger. So it's not a simple case of nature or nurture. It's the really complex way that nature and nurture interact.
This chart really drives home that genetic component. You can see it so clearly. As you get more genetically related to someone with schizophrenia, your own risk goes up. For the general population, the risk is about 1%. If you have a sibling with it, that risk jumps to around 9%. And for an identical twin who shares 100% of their genes, the lifetime risk gets close to 50%. It's a huge jump.
And we can actually see differences in how the brain functions. These are PET scans showing brain activity. On the left, you see a typical brain all lit up and active. But on the right, in the brain of a patient with schizophrenia, you can see there's visibly less activity, especially in the frontal lobe. And that's the part of the brain that's in charge of things like reasoning and planning.
So after all of this, what's the biggest thing to take away? I think it's that these conditions are not just one thing. They're a spectrum. They're all constructed from a common set of building blocks, sure, but each one is put together differently by how long it lasts, how severe it is, what the combination of symptoms looks like. And seeing psychosis this way, not as some single scary label, but as a unique structure built from understandable parts, that's the first and maybe the most important step towards empathy and genuine understanding.